Question period sounded like fun this week, too, and it's been powered in part by the Boundary Dam carbon capture plant. The plant, it seems, is not quite up to snuff, and when you're a premier who's boasted about your province's groundbreaking technology, that leads to questions. Marie Mandryk and Stefani Langenegger have been capturing all the debate, and they join me now. Good morning.
Morning.
It is a little like pumpkin bowling. You get those little orange balls flowing down the middle of that aisle, and all of a sudden you see carbon capture flying everywhere.
Yeah, you do. I know. It's just scary stuff all around, isn't it? Okay, so this might take a long time, but maybe you better start by setting us up by telling us what's wrong with this plant.
Well, what we know this week, based on internal briefing documents that were released by the opposition, leaked to the opposition, these aren't documents you get through FOI. You would have been denied on that. This is leaked documents. Some of them, I've never seen a briefing note just for the premier, prepared only for the premier, but they had one of those this week. It's always interesting when an opposition starts to get that level of internal briefing note. And what they show is that this carbon capture plant, although the government and the Sask Power officials say that it can capture carbon at 90%, i.e. take 90% of it out, this carbon dioxide out, it's not working more than half the time. And so when you look at the average, it's performing at something like 40% rather than the 90% we had been led to believe it was operating at.
And it's shut down now? Is it shut down?
Yeah, it's supposed to start up again, we were told, in November, mid-November.
Yeah. So why isn't it working?
Well, several reasons, one of which is our flaws in terms of the construction design of it. There's lawsuits in the process related to SNC-Lavalin that should settle some aspect of this matters to say government, but I sincerely doubt they will. Why it's not working, and it was a very risky, costly project. It was one in which we took a flyer on the notion that we could save the coal industry as a province. And I think actually Premier Bradwell has a valid point. We have all this coal sitting there and we have a choice. We either try to clean it up or shut it down.
Yeah.
Now, they could phase it out. They could do a lot of things a lot better that they probably should be working on that probably would have been a little bit more efficient than some of the things that they were doing. But they took a flyer on the notion that this scrubber thing will work and that this carbon sequestration will work.
And they had been doing it for a while, right? In Weyburn, not selling it.
You'll remember it started under the NDP as a much smaller scale pilot project. And then the decision point then was, if you can do it on a small scale, can we do it on a massive Boundary Dam station scale? Yeah. And the good news, according to the government and officials at Sask Power, is they found out they can do it. The bad news and the transparency problem is nobody was told they can only do it less than half the time. And so their argument is, look, this is first of its kind in the world. You expect it just to run on all 6 cylinders, the president was telling me yesterday, as soon as you turn it on? No, it's going to take years to get up to optimum.
That, though, that when you're leading the world with this massive pilot project, it is a little bit of a risk, and there may be some startup
that would
problems.
be a great argument if they had told us that all the way along. But instead, we're finding out this week that glowing press releases and super excited tweets were telling us half the story. It captures carbon at 90% when it works. It doesn't even work. It hasn't even worked for one full day. The president says it works for a couple hours and then it doesn't work anymore. So don't you, if you want to decide whether it's worth retrofitting Boundary 4 and 5 after you've pumped $1.5 billion into Boundary Unit 3, don't you want to know how often Unit 3 is working, not just how well it can work at its best day, and not even best day, but best few hours?
So the opposition's got a good one.
Well, it's not just the opposition's got a good one. It's the government's created a bad one. And I hear this all the time, particularly from conservative politicians over the years, and certainly from conservative-minded politicians, and certainly from Bradwell. And you largely ignore it as the nasty rhetoric that goes on. But the word is used car salesman in terms of used car salesman. But that is the term that they often use for leadership, in which they overhype something like this. To be quite frank, I've never seen it more applicable to Bradwell this week than was this week, simply because of what he tweeted, what he said, how he's reacted to the situation.
How has he reacted? What's he been saying?
really
Smug?
Yes, very unfortunate smugness, particularly initial in a very partisan way. And I get the partisan part, because the partisan part also contains a relatively strong argument about what is our energy future. If we shut down this, we shut down Estevan, we have and to be quite frank, that is not nearly as tragic, as bad as that is, as bad as job loss would be. That's not nearly as tragic for the province as the power opportunity lost and how it can be immediately replaced. Wind is great, but it's going to take an incredible investment in startup costs and other things to make it work.
And some say maybe we should have been talking about wind years ago,
Some say
right?
we
And
should.
we'd be in a different place
This is
today.
the other problem that I find in that it's not just Brad Wall who's doing this. It's politician after decade after decade that hasn't had the courage to basically look at coal and say, this is not in the long term viable.
Have we got ourselves an election issue?
I don't know. A lot of people, some people were tweeting to me yesterday that they just thought this would make people's eyes glaze over, this whole issue, and at what percent carbon dioxide was being captured from a coal stack people seem to have their mind made up. Either there's no such thing as clean coal, so stop pouring your money into it, or look, this is the way to save the coal industry, as Brad Wall says. What do you want to do? You want to shut it down, Cam Broughton? Why don't you go to Estevan and say that? Those seem to be the entrenched views on this. But if you're a ratepayer at Sask Power, which all of us are, and shareholders in the company, I wonder just the economics of this. Are looking poor. This was never going to make a ton of money. This $1.5 billion, Murray's written columns about it. At one time we were told it might return $100 million on that $1.5 billion by selling this CO2 to the enhanced oil recovery companies. They stand, by the way, to make billions of dollars using that carbon dioxide to get more oil out of the ground. Ratepayers at Sask Power are subsidizing that sale of that commodity by investing in this new technology. Now, is that a good investment or not? Well, we can't decide that if we don't have 100% of the information.
Transparency.
We don't really need spin and gung-ho, this is awesome. The technology might be great, but if it's not working even for a full day yet, if it works 40% of the time, these are things we all need to know to make informed decisions about what our power companies should do next. And I'm troubled that a year ago we were talking about the smart meter and all the money that our Sask Power poured into smart meters and then decided to go fight to try and get back from the company when it thought it wasn't as good as it had told us it was. Remember how good smart meters were and we just didn't understand? And now, again, we have Sask Power paying some 97% of the bills and saying, oh, looks like we overpaid. There's issues with the design, and they're fighting not just with SNC-Lavalin, but multiple companies in court.
And paying penalties
over hundreds of millions of dollars.
For not delivering on the carbon capture.
When
as well, on top of that.
On top of that,
when
paying
government
penalties.
starts making a huge investment and telling us how stupid we are, it becomes an election issue. And this is the problem that I think that they're having right now. They're making this huge capital investment, or at least political capital investment, into the notion that voters, reporters, whoever else doesn't understand why your rates are going up 40% in Sask Power, why this is really the best way to it. You're not really thinking it clear. I think their problem is people that are thinking it clear. And I think that those people are both on the left and the right and see the massive investment in this, see the problems. And I think it is going to be problematic. Is it enough to kick them out of office this term? No, absolutely not. I don't think so. But it's a problem.
Well, thanks for helping us understand the issue a little bit better, both of you. And Murray, take care of that throat.
Thank you. I will.
You sound awful. Thanks for coming in.
You're welcome.
Have a great weekend, guys. Stefani Langenegger and Murray Mandryk. Power up our Friday mornings right here on CBC Radio. So over to you. Is this the best thing ever for Saskatchewan, or are we talking boondoggle? We'd like to hear from you. Give us a call, 1-800-661-7540. You can tweet me at Sheila Coles CBC. You can tweet them at S. Langenegger CBC or at M. Mandryk.